If you don't mind muting your phones, please, turning them off in respect for our guests today, I would appreciate it very much. I've already taken care of mine. The Natural Resource Committee, under the leadership of Barbara Adamson here, agreed this year to focus on public education about stormwater management. We are working with Marcia Manter to do an outreach program through the Speakers Bureau, which will look somewhat like this, we hope, because we want to be consistent with what the Public Works Department is saying. So if you get an opportunity, I think Marcia is going to press you to give us the name of groups that might be interested in this program before you leave today. So talk to Marcia or sign up on the sheet. Appreciate it.
Marcia's worried her phone wasn't turned
off. Stormwater management is becoming increasingly important. Both Lee and I actually participated in a workshop that Mid-America Regional Council had just a while back on climate change and resilience. We've had questions here about whether we want to do a program on climate change. Well, I'll tell you, one of the impacts that we know from some of the modeling, some of our data, is that we're going to see more problems with stormwater. We're going to have drought increasing because of the heat, but also intermittent flooding episodes. So dealing with stormwater is going to become crucial in the future, if not already. So as Johnson County grows, there is a need to balance the maintenance of natural drainage systems, economic growth, and our quality of life. And this is off their website, I cheated. There are solutions for protecting human lives and property, for preventing water pollution from runoff, and for promoting appropriate public use of Johnson County stream corridors. We have two speakers today, and their boss is here too, so they're going to be on their best behavior. Heather Schmidt is a water quality specialist for the Stormwater Management Program. She's been with the county since 2007. I think I've pretty much known you since you arrived here. Heather's primary responsibility as water quality specialist is to assist the cities in Johnson County in meeting federal and state regulations to prevent pollution. And prior to her employment with the county, Heather was a hydrologist, someone who studies water, with the U.S. Geological Survey. She has a BS and an MS in geology from KU. Lee, the tall one, Lee Kellenberger is a program manager for the Johnson County Stormwater Management Program. He's been with the county since 2005. He works with each of the municipalities, and the county has taken the lead on this issue, and he'll explain that, trying to get all of the municipalities in Johnson County to adopt best management practices, as you can imagine, could be a chore. But he helps them address their stormwater management needs. The program provides financial and technical assistance on a variety of issues, including flooding, water quality, and watershed planning. Lee has a BS in Environmental Studies and a Master's in Water Resources Science from KU. And Lee, you're going to start?
I'll start.
Awesome.
All right, thank you, Elaine. I will try to hold the mic appropriately. Just raise your hand if I drop it down. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for the opportunity to be here this morning. We're excited to be partnering with the League of Women Voters in Johnson County. We're going to try to share with you some just general information today, but I think we're going to be working hand in hand to come up with some communication and outreach materials that you guys can help use to spread our message around. So you might be thinking, why would a couple of county employees be here in the early February to talk about stormwater management? Well, as Elaine said, Heather and I, we're very passionate about stormwater, and we even go back beyond just our time here at the county. We've actually worked together for 17 years. We both started off at KU and at the USGS, and so we've been all over the state of Kansas looking at water quality issues, and we've been here together at the county for the last 10 years or so, and excited to be here, and this really is a rapidly evolving field. Stormwater management is relatively new, since the 60s, 70s or so, as we'll get into. So, with that, I'm going to give you guys a brief history of kind of the evolution, and then Heather's going to kind of get into the meat and potatoes, I think, some of the education and outreach stuff. So, we'll get started. All right, so get the water off the street. Sorry, it's kind of off on the top of there. That was kind of the rallying cry for stormwater management for most of the 20th century. Stormwater management really wasn't given a high priority. It it was viewed as a nuisance, really. And municipalities, the way we were developing, we just tried to get the water into the curbs and into the pipes, into the stream as quickly as possible. No thought was really given to comprehensive stormwater management or planning, or really even flooding concerns. That was kind of the next guys down the road's problem. So this approach obviously had some pretty bad consequences, namely flooding. Some of you may recognize the photos on the bottom here, that clock tower, and the bottom right picture is on the plaza. That was the Plaza Flood of 1977. You can see how wide Brush Creek got there, and 25 people lost their lives during that flood, and millions of dollars worth of property damage occurred on the Country Club Plaza. So that event really kind of sparked stormwater management and brought it to the forefront of everyone's mind. We realized that we probably should be looking at this a little bit differently. Really realized it probably wasn't a good idea just to send all the water to the pipe, or pipe it and send it to the stream as quickly as possible. So developments and urbanization that occurred after about 1977 started to look a little bit differently. We started to incorporate things like detention ponds that would hold back a certain amount of the runoff before leaving the stream to control flooding. So, next slide. So, just a kind of a little history on, or a little bit of an overview of why urbanization or developments, how they impact stormwater runoff. So, here in these two pictures, you can see the same 40 acres here in Johnson County. The one on the left is taken in 2001, and the one on the right is taken in 2005. So, on the left, you'll see we have a farm field primarily and a farmhouse there. And on the right, we have an elementary school that's gone in and about 200 single-family homes on quarter-acre lots. So, how does this change things from a hydrologic standpoint? Well, it has all to do with the impervious surface. I'm going to go back. On the left, let's see here. Sorry, I lost my spot. My train of thought here. So on the left, the majority of the water that falls is absorbed by vegetation or plants, and on the right, we have more impervious surface on the rooftops, the roads, the driveways. So the volume of runoff increases by about a factor of 5, and also the time it takes for that water to reach the nearest stream decreases significantly. So on the right, or on the left, a drop of water that falls, may take 60 minutes for that drop of water to reach the nearest stream, and on the right, that same drop of water may only take now about 5 minutes because it just goes off the driveway into the pipe and into the stream. So we've short-circuited a lot, and so the volume and the frequency and the time it takes to get that water to get the stream is all made much more efficient. So, like I said, we do have detention. So these developments that have gone in for the past 60 or 50 years do have detention standards, but they only control the most significant rainfall events. The more frequent events still go straight through to our streams. So, this next slide kind of illustrates that in another direction, or another way. You can see on the left, the cartoon shows that the rain that falls on the natural watershed, about 50% of that actually infiltrates and gets to groundwater as recharge. 40% is taken up by vegetation and evapotranspiration through plants, and about 10% leaves that site as runoff. Where on the right, we have a developed or an impervious watershed, and now only about 10 to 15% actually makes it through and recharges groundwater, is absorbed by the ground. 55% now is runoff, and only about 30% is taken up by plant. So a huge change. Okay, I got to catch up to my notes. I don't want to miss anything. All right, so how do our streams respond to this? Well, as we already discussed, it definitely makes flooding worse. We do have flooding, but it also compromises stream stability and water quality. as shown in this graphic, if less than 5% of the watershed is impervious, the system can still behave pretty much as a natural system. We have, a healthy aquatic ecosystem here. The bed and the bank are pretty stable. We have a nice riparian corridor. But as soon as you start approaching as little as 10% impervious surface in your watershed, things start to decline pretty rapidly. We start to see in the pictures here decreased water quality. The bed and the bank start to erode more significantly. So this increased volume of runoff, translates into, decreased stream stability. I already said that, sorry. So eventually, as you can see, once you start getting more and more impervious surface in your watershed, a municipality may just finally get fed up, and the only way they can control that stream, they think, is to just channel or armor the channel with concrete. And at this point, you don't even have a functioning stream anymore. You just have a drainage ditch or a canal through your city. So this was still going on in the 80s, 70s, and 80s and 90s in Johnson County here. To bring it a little closer to home, I'll show the next slide. This picture is taken of Mill Creek near the confluence with the Kansas River. So there's a number of factors going on here, but one of those is increased runoff from impervious surface. So this isn't a natural phenomenon. This cut bank is about 50 feet tall, and part of the reason why this is occurring is from upstream development of impervious surfaces. So it is most of the majority of our major streams in Johnson County have undergone this transformation over the last 100 years, really. So they all are pretty degraded. Next slide. This is going to be a little more difficult, but I wanted to kind of. So now we're about in the early 1980s. We're doing a better job of controlling flooding, but there's still one major flaw in the way we're managing stormwater in Johnson County, and that is that we still have. What I'm trying to show by this map is the map of the county. In the colored areas, you can see the city boundaries, and then what I'm trying to show with the blue lines and the green lines, the blue lines are the streams, and the green lines are the watershed areas that contribute to those streams. So even in the 1980s and 90s, in the 80s, we still had 20 different municipalities trying to manage stormwater independently of one another. So take Tomahawk Creek, for example. Here, it originates out over here in eastern Olathe, travels through Overland Park before finally reaching Leawood and the confluence with Indian Creek. So in the early 80s, Leawood may permit a development or design a bridge with the best available information they have, not knowing what may be going on upstream or in the future, and subsequently that bridge or development that they were building would flood in subsequent years. So, but there's still very little interjurisdictional coordination occurring in the 80s, but we were doing a little bit better job on flood control. So, bringing us up to speed here, we went through the 80s, most of the 80s like that, still creating flood problems. Then along came House Bill 271, and I don't know the whole story of how this bill got introduced. Kent could probably get into that a little more, but basically it passed through the Kansas legislature, and it enabled counties, any county in the state of Kansas, to enact a 10th of a cent sales tax levy for the specific purpose of controlling and managing stormwater. Fortunately, Johnson County adopted that tax. We were the only we were the only county in Kansas to adopt it, and we've been collecting it ever since for the purpose of stormwater. Subsequently, the Board of County Commissioners formally created the Stormwater Management Program and the Stormwater Management Advisory Council. And the main focus of the program in the early years was to fix the flooding problems that we created in the past, with the first ones being funded in 1992. But it also served even a more important role of facilitating discussion between the cities, which has led to more consistency in development standards and design standards. And quickly we learned through this communication, we identified the need for the program to take a more proactive role. Rather than reacting to problems as they occurred, we decided it was it would be beneficial if we kind of started to forecast out what conditions were going to be like. And the most notable one of those proactive approaches was doing updates to our countywide floodplain maps. Johnson County has some of the most sophisticated floodplain maps in the country. Not only do they tell us where the floodplain boundary is today, but we forecasted out what the ultimate condition will be as development occurs in the future. So we're not only no longer creating flooding problems now, but we're going to ensure that even at ultimate build-out conditions, where the floodplain boundary is going to be. So over the past 25 years, we've funded upwards of 250 projects with the cities at a cost of approximately $250 million. So we've done a lot to address flooding, but our work isn't done yet. In 2005, as Heather's going to get into, Johnson County, we received our first water quality regulations from KDHE. We are now starting to look at stormwater management in a more holistic approach. The first, everything I talked about up until this point was only flood control only. Now we're being required to address water quality as part of our stormwater management. And then we're excited because we're just actually finishing up a new strategic plan for the program. It's going to kind of set the stage for stormwater management for the next 25 years. And in that plan, we're going to start looking at things like watershed-based planning and more water quality improvements and so forth. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather, who is going to get into more of the water quality stuff that we've been doing recently. So thank you.
Learn how to use this microphone here and make my way to the podium. All right. Well, thank you very much for having us today. As Lee said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit, everybody can hear me, about water quality in Johnson County, and specifically about stormwater quality. But first, I'd kind of like to take a look back, too, on how we got here to the awareness of water quality that we have today. So, throughout history, unfortunately, we've kind of used our rivers and streams as dumping grounds. They're pretty efficient, like Leah said. We can put our waste there, and it goes away. It goes downstream. We don't see it anymore. And this worked okay when we were living further apart from each other and basically living off the land. But as we developed into a more industrialized nation with larger population centers and more toxic waste, we started to see, it became more and more apparent that this solution wasn't working very well. And we had big dramatic events like the Cuyahoga River in Ohio catching fire several times. Wrap your brain around that, the rivers catching fire in the 50s and 60s. And things like this spurred the federal government to say, hey, we got to do something about this, and pass the Clean Water Act in 1972. So the Clean Water Act establishes the states to have the authority to regulate discharges into the nation's waterways. This permitting program is called the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Program, which you may have heard of as NPDES. We like to throw that little acronym out quite a lot. And this program started regulating with the point sources because those are pretty visual polluters at that time. They were easier to get into and permit. So with these point sources, now like wastewater discharge plants, wastewater treatment discharge plants, and industrial sources, they have to obtain a permit and treat that water to a certain standard before they're allowed to discharge it into the waterway. And also with the Clean Water Act, water quality standards for surface water were established. So that would give us kind of now a measuring stick to see how clean or how polluted a certain water body would be. And so, go ahead to the next slide, please.
as we started to get the point sources of pollution under control and permitted and into compliance, we were still seeing with those water quality standards in our surface water that we were making some improvement, but certainly not enough improvement, which caused EPA to look towards stormwater runoff as a significant contributor, got it out, of stormwater pollution. So as you can see here, research from the EPA established that a large portion of our waters that were still not meeting those water quality standards were doing so because of the stormwater pollution. So, in the 1990s, EPA began to start to regulate stormwater discharges through the MPDS program, permitting authority. But we had to approach stormwater in a little different way than we did point sources because of the way Lee talked about and how stormwater is delivered to the streams and rivers. If you think of a wastewater treatment plant, there's pipes that pipe it all to a centralized location, gather it at that source, treat it, and then discharge it to the river. But that doesn't really happen with stormwater, does it? It gets piped, sometimes it gets piped pretty far, but it gets piped directly into our streams at many different points in an urbanized area. So the approach to the permitting had to fit the way that stormwater reaches the stream. And partly because it would have been extremely difficult in 1990 to rearrange how we were managing stormwater flows, our permitting had to address the source of that pollution. And and the majority of that source of that pollution is us, and what we do every day in taking care of our lawns and taking care of our pets, driving our cars around, and having safe roads, and building houses, and then just generating trash in general. So basically, like the MARC Water Quality Ed Committee tagline, if it's on the ground, it's in your water. And so you can see a list of typical things that we see on the ground and sometimes things we don't see on the ground, like the bacteria. This is getting all into our stormwater. And the most common pollutants that we see in stormwater, like our little dog. Oh. There we go. Now I can see him. So the big three major players in stormwater pollution and what our streams in Johnson County are impaired for are sediment, nutrients, which are the chemicals nitrogen and phosphorus, which every plant needs to grow, and then bacteria. And you can see a few little sources of how sediment gets into our streams. When we go in and make a new development, clear all that land off, we take off all the vegetative cover that was holding that soil in place and make it really susceptible to erode during rainfall events. Also, like Lee showed with the Mill Creek example, the streams are actually contributing a lot of that sediment too. Just with the increase to flow, the banks are eroding and sediment is moving into the streams. Nutrients are the nitrogen and phosphorus, are what we put on our lawns and our landscaping gardens to make our plants grow. And that's okay, but we need to be responsible in how we're doing fertilizing and know and get that fertilizer not on the sidewalk and make sure that it's actually getting to where it needs to go. And then bacteria, our source of bacteria in stormwater is pet waste and wildlife waste, like geese that like to gather around, open areas, water. So that's a little bit harder nut to crack, but pets we can take care of. Next slide. So what do these things do when they get into our streams? Why are they such a problem? With sediment, as you can see in the top picture, there was a construction site uphill from here that wasn't well controlling their sediment runoff. And you can see it makes the water pretty cloudy. It reduces the visibility in the stream for the aquatic habitat. When that sediment gets into a slower moving part of the stream and settles into those ponds, it reduces the area where the fish like to live and lay their eggs and the little bugs that they eat. They don't like to live there and muck. And also sediment carries pollutants with it. Bacteria like to attach to sediment. Nutrients, particularly phosphorus, which is a bigger problem here, attached to that sediment, and it transports it down. Takes a little piggyback ride. So, and then with excess nutrients in our streams, the nitrogen and phosphorus can lead to things like algal blooms, which I'm sure everyone has seen. Algae growing on ponds in the area, and aside from being rather unsightly, you don't want to particularly see a green pond. That algae in the water, when it dies, when it decays, it eats up all the oxygen, which can lead to fish kills. And when it dies, it can also produce toxins, which can be dangerous for animals like dogs that could swim in here, or and if humans are swimming in this types of water, those toxins can cause skin irritation, rashes. And it can, if a surface water is used for a drinking water source, those can cause taste and odor problems in the finished drinking water. And then bacteria, obviously, is a human health risk. You don't want to swim in a water that has a high bacteria load. So this all sounds kind of scary and frightening, and we get really worried right now. But things are being done. What's being done right now, as Lee mentioned, in 2005, KDHE, the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, issued NPDES permits for stormwater discharges in 12 of the Johnson County communities, as well as the unincorporated area. These permits require the municipalities to pass regulations that govern the likely sources of stormwater pollution, as well as an education component to educate the citizens, because, like I said, we're kind of the source of stormwater pollution. So the first regulations that we had to pass, and kind of back up a little bit here, like Lee talked about with our coordination with the cities on floodplain management, we also coordinate with all of the cities, so it helps all of us we come up with model ordinances for the cities to follow if they choose to, and that helps to kind of make everybody on an even playing field as far as regulations go. And if people are moving from city to city for their jobs, they know everyone in Johnson County pretty much has the same rules regarding stormwater. So the first regulations that we passed were basically pollution prevention regulations. Believe it or not, there's nothing on the state level or the federal level that says it is illegal to put something down a storm drain. Those are all at the local level now. So that made it officially illegal to dump anything down the storm drain. And believe it or not, we still have quite a bit of problem with that, partly because of the education of people don't know where these drains go. They don't understand that they go directly to the stream, and that's why education is a big part of what we do. So basically those just say, make sure there's only rain in the drain. Next regulations that we have to pass, or had to pass, was to control sediment off of construction sites. Originally in 1990, when the first NPDES regulations for stormwater were passed, they started with construction sites of 5 acres or greater if you disturbed that much land. But in the second round of permitting that happened in the later 90s, they realized that there's an awful lot of construction sites that are less than 5 acres that we need to control too. So with these regulations, there is actually a state regulation that if a construction project disturbs more than 1 acre, they need to obtain a state permit. and now they have to obtain a local permit to control the sediment from coming off that site. And you can kind of see the differences in whether or not a site is a regulated site or not. On the left side, we see there's a silt fence there, but it's not being maintained. And there's a lot of runoff that you can see. The sediment is traveling directly towards that storm drain there. On the right side, you see where the site owner has developed a Stormwater Water Pollution Prevention Plan, which is what that SWIP stands for right there. And these plans they have to submit to the cities and agree to put in sediment controls like the silt fence and maintain them. And also, if a site, this site looks like it was somewhere where the roads went in first, and it may be a little while before homes are starting to be built. So when that happens, it's required to put ground cover like those grasses to hold that sediment in place. And if you see a site that looks like the one on the left, call your city. Let them know. And then the final stormwater regulations that we had to pass with these permits was to mitigate new construction. So like Lee talked about with that development he showed in the earlier part of the presentation, as we start to increase the impervious area, obviously that causes issues for our streams. So now there's regulations in place when a developer comes in with a plat or a plan to build a subdivision or a new Walmart or whatever, that increased impervious area that they're proposing has to be mitigated for. And we do that through things like detention ponds, like Lee had talked about, but adding some plants to those detention ponds to encourage infiltration into the ground. Doing things like rain gardens or bioretention cells, which are basically bigger rain gardens. This plant life helps increase that infiltration that we lose with the impervious areas being there. And so those are on the books now, and developments are starting to go in using those types of best management practices. And then finally, we do a lot of education and a lot of outreach to educate people on why it's important to care about whether a construction site has the dirt falling off of it or not. We do these through the Johnson County Stormwater Management Program kind of does for the county as a whole, and then the cities individually also do additional education and outreach. We do these through traditional means of newsletters and news magazines. We'll do educational articles in there. We all have websites that have a lot of information on stormwater pollution and preventing that. And then we're starting to dabble a little bit, because I'm not very good at this, into social media. And fortunately, we have some very savvy public information officers at our CMO's office that are helping me out with that. So follow us on Facebook. Next slide. Also, we have the opportunity with the Stormwater Management Program to provide some water quality education grants. And these grants, way back in the inception, I know that the League of Women Voters had a grant that enabled them to do their speaker bureau presentations. These are available to nonprofits and to schools. And it allows us to do really direct education to a wide audience of people. I can't go out and talk to everybody, 9,000 people in Johnson County, about stormwater. And we have age-appropriate presentations. So we have a puppet show that is wonderful for preschool age to about second grader kids, gets the message to them. We need to start young and letting people know that, there's a problem with throwing just your trash on the ground. People don't quite get that yet. Then we have programs that go into middle schoolers, into high school classrooms, and actually sample waters in Johnson County, analyze that data, and then they can look at whether it's good or bad and what they can do about helping out that. And hopefully it spurs some people like Lee and I to go into doing stormwater and water quality work when they get into college and beyond. And then for the adults, we have some more active kinds of programs going on. There's litter cleanups that are organized. We have rain barrel classes to learn about stormwater and building rain barrels, and then also rain garden classes. And then we also have things like the Healthy Yards Expo, which is coming up here on April 2nd. This is basically a home and garden show, or a lawn and garden show, for green lawn care or stormwater-friendly lawn care. We have various vendors, and you can see the sign that is blocking me now, right back there. League of Women Voters was there last year giving their booth and presentation for the Water One partnership. This year you guys are going to be there promoting our 3 for Clean Stormwater campaign. It's a great event. There's a lot of people there all the time. There's plants for sale. We have native plant giveaways, rain barrel giveaways, master gardeners and K-State extension agents give educational presentations on gardening and lawn care, and it's just a really good event that we've been fortunate to partner with for the past several years. So that kind of brings us to what you can do at your house. Like I said, nutrients is a big stormwater polluter, and lawn care is a big reason for that. So we don't want everybody to let their lawns just go, because that would be bad for the sediment. But things you can do at your house: test your soil. Make sure that you're using the right types of fertilizer. We provide funding to make it free for a basic soil test for Johnson County residents, and you can take your soil test and bring it to the Healthy Yards Expo when you go, and they'll take it for you. Or if you just do it on your own, you can take it to the extension office in Olathe, and they'll do your soil test for you for free. Follow expert recommendations. K-State Extension is a great resource for fertilizer application and timing. Mulch mow your yard. Not only does it save you time and bagging and all that, but it returns valuable nutrients to your soil that it needs. Those grass clippings actually break down to nitrogen and phosphorus, and that's exactly what you need in a fertilizer. And then always, always, always sweep your grass clippings or leaves or fertilizer, especially fertilizer, from hard surfaces, because that just, like Lee said, it takes, 5 minutes for that raindrop to get to the stream, and it picks up whatever it finds along the way with it. Also, other things you can do is, I mentioned rain barrel classes. You can install a rain barrel to capture the runoff off your roof. That'll reduce that amount of water getting to the streams. You can build a rain garden, which is a little more of a commitment, but if we start transitioning our landscaping to capture runoff and to infiltrate it, that is a good thing. And also through the Johnson County Storm Management Program, the cities can obtain funding to cost share with homeowners, usually about a 50% cost share, on installing things like rain barrels or rain gardens or native plantings or pervious concrete. It depends on the cities run their programs how they want to, so it depends on what your city has decided to opt into. We're still finalizing our list for 2016, and these are the cities that are for sure participating. I know Westwood Hills and Gardner are also getting their applications in. So if you don't see your city up there, call your Public Works Department and let them know that you'd like them to participate, so you can participate and take advantage of this program. All right, and what else can you do? This is a pretty civically minded group, I take it, so let's take action and spread the word. Our 3 for Clean Stormwater campaign, we're starting to partner with Barbara and Elaine on. It's basically a call to action, very simple steps. Pick 3 of these to do to make sure that you and your friends and your church groups and your book clubs don't pollute the stormwater. You can organize litter pickups with your groups that you belong to, And most importantly, support municipal stormwater initiatives. Obviously, we have a lot of regulations going in for water quality, and we have a lot of voices telling our elected officials why they're bad and why we shouldn't be passing anything to support water quality. And we need to be thinking about and having voices that say, no, these are okay. We need to protect our water resources in our county. And it would be very helpful for that. And then also, be the eyes for your city. We can't all your city staff can't all be watching every storm drain in the city. So if you see someone dumping something suspicious down the storm drain, or just somebody that habitually blows their grass into the storm drain, hazardous type material looking, you want to call 911 and get someone there pretty quickly. Habitual grass clippings, you might call your city and they might do an education campaign in your neighborhood to kind of get people more aware and then take further steps from there. And then finally, the last thing you can do, the most important thing you can do, I think, is enjoy our Johnson County waterways and encourage other people to do the same. Because I believe that if people are connected to their water and they want it clean, they want to make sure that it's there for their children and grandchildren to enjoy in years to come. And we have some fabulous lakes that you can canoe and the beautiful streamway trails of Johnson County parks for us to enjoy. And with that, thank you very much. There's our contact information and our fabulous social media.
Why don't we get Lee back up here, and Heather, we're going to open the floor to some question and answer. And rather than running the mics around, if you have a question, if you would come up here, it would make life a lot easier for us. And if you have specific questions about rain gardens or rain barrels or something you know where to report and so on, come on up. And I'm going to turn this over to Christine, and she's going to help moderate this.
Hi, I'm Christine Caseras, and I'm just going to moderate the questions. We just ask that you ask your question. It's about 3 minutes long or so, and one question per person when you come up to the mic. And also, if you could wait till it seems like everybody has asked a question before you come up and ask another question. But we're happy to have all your questions. So here's the first person.
We all live, other people live downstream from what we put into the water. The question that I have is driveways. They're impervious. That is the only place in my yard where the water goes into the stream. I would like us to work on cities to allow impervious driveways. Pervious driveways, excuse me. That's my question.
Pervious. Sorry, this one's a little bit louder. That's a good point. Pervious driveways. I don't know of any cities that are going to allow gravel driveways, but there are products out there. Interlocking concrete pavers. There's porous concrete, impervious asphalt now, where the concrete itself is actually, should have brought a piece of it today, but it looks like concrete, but you can actually pour water straight through it. So there are products out there, interlocking concrete pavers, porous concrete, pervious pavement, that are ideally suited for driveways. We don't see them a lot yet in this part of the country, but they are very popular in other areas, and they are available. Actually, some of the products are made right here in Kansas City. Old Castle plant makes a lot of pavers here, and they have specific products just exactly for that. So there are out there. So next time you want to replace your driveway, think pervious.
And some cities will do
Hi.
cost share on that.
Some cities will actually do cost share on that. Not gravel driveways. I'm not saying put it in. I don't think that city or city will allow that, but for the previous products I just mentioned, they should allow those.
I live in a housing development that has had a retention pond since its inception in the 70s. The challenge is that sediment accumulates, and it's very expensive to have sediment removed. So now there are a group of residents who are pushing for reverting to the stream. What are the advantages, if any, for doing that?
that is a very big problem in Johnson County. There are hundreds and hundreds of legacy detention ponds all over the county that were designed in the 70s and 80s that only provide flood control or aesthetic benefits. They don't provide any water quality improvement. A pond, by its nature, is an impoundment to hold back water. When that water goes into that pond, it stagnates and all the sediment falls out. By design, they're only going to last 25, 50 years, depending on the size of the pond. So they're all going to fill in. So we get calls, 10 to 15 calls a year from HOAs saying, will you come clean out our pond? The county can't get involved in all that right now. But there is opportunities, I think, in the future to look at that. Because if we could come in, maybe cost share with homeowners associations to clean those ponds out, retrofit them to provide some additional water quality improvements, we would then take ownership of those ponds, I believe. So that's down the road, but I think that there is an opportunity there to work with your city or the county in the future because, like Heather mentioned, we're now addressing new development with our regulations. There's nothing in our regulations that are going to make us go back into the developed areas of the county inside the 435 loop and do anything. So those situations are never get better until we actually go in and say we're going to make a conscious effort now to improve water quality. So it's probably not what you wanted to hear, but there is for as far as going back to just a natural stream system, you wouldn't have the sediment accumulation problem anymore, but there may be other ramifications. There may be flooding. It may cause, your pond, even though it's filled in, it may still be providing some detention, some flood control for downstream communities. So it would have to be analyzed and have to be modeled. But the stream itself, it is an ecosystem, and it does serve a purpose as well. So there are a lot of advantages, whether it's a pond or a stream, either way. From a water quality perspective, I'll leave it at that.
Good morning. Thank you for your presentation. My name is Chris Roselle. I'm a public health professional. I've studied civil engineering. I've worked with water and sanitation all over the world. Recently, I toured the storm and sewer treatment systems of Atlanta, Georgia, North and South Atlanta. And to my recollection, they had a unified system, and they treated the stormwater the same as they treated the sewer to eliminate chemical, bacterial, trash, etc. I have a slight sense of panic hearing that we don't. Some of the things that I would like addressed, first, is there the opportunity to tour our treatment centers so we can actually see? That's what made the biggest impression on me, not studying about it, not hearing about it, but actually walking around and looking at each part and having it explained to me what it did and what it didn't do. Now that I know what a system should look like, and I hear what our system is like, I have a slight raised anxiety level. Nitrogen contamination, I didn't hear what the nutrient load is, I didn't hear what the trash load, I didn't hear what the chemical load, I didn't hear, and I say, wow. So mainly, how do we tour these facilities so that we are really knowledgeable firsthand rather than second or third?
I'm going to move over here so I can share my mic with, Heather. I'm sorry. That way you guys can both have a mic.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. All right. Sorry, I'm not.
Okay, that's a great question. In older cities like Atlanta, and maybe you've heard in Kansas City, Missouri, there are combined sewer systems. And actually, those are not the best for stormwater management. because when the stormwater gets into the combined sewers, it kind of creates an overflow for the sanitary sewer system, and that actually could cause worse pollution than what the stormwater is. I know it's kind of scary that things are not treated in a plant for stormwater, but that's what I kind of was trying to relay was with stormwater, we have to treat the source of the pollutant, not the water at the end of the pipe. Because in Johnson County, we have what's called a separate storm sewer system. Our wastewater treatment goes to a plant. It is not connected to our stormwater. And so during large rain events, we don't have the issues with raw sewage coming into our streams as much. There are still some problems with infiltration into the old pipes, and where sewer lines cross streams, there can be problems with that. But it's actually better, as it might not be intuitive, it's actually better to keep that stormwater separate from the treatment. You can go and tour Johnson County wastewater treatment plants. You can check it out on their website. They do tours of all of them, and they're doing a really great job at keeping the water coming out of the wastewater treatment plants here in Johnson County is very good. They're national award winners. They actually, one of their plants reuses the methane. Thank you, Elaine.
That's an interesting tour.
So they produce methane and use that to use some of their power in their plants there. So great sustainability efforts there. As far as touring, what we're doing for stormwater, there are different places where we have larger wetlands that have been installed, like at Lake Lenexa is a stormwater. It's basically a great stormwater treatment facility. So they're not like a plant like we have, for wastewater. The water that moves into Lake Lenexa goes through a series of wetlands and rain gardens, and then is finally ponded there, and was built in the anticipation of the development that is happening to the west. And so it cleans up the stormwater, and that is owned by the city, so it's not going to be where it gets filled in, and plus it has the wetlands to kind of trap that sediment before it gets in there. So those are the types of systems we use to treat stormwater. Trash, we got to pick it up, and we got to not have it be thrown out of cars and such. That's just the way we have to solve that one, unfortunately. So, is that good?
Yep, over here.
At this point, are we depending on people like yourselves to develop and put into place these, like rain gardens and water barrels, or are there groups around and about who are, like master gardener groups who will teach people how to build and use their own rainwater system or whatever else that you could do at your home?
That's a great question, too. Yes, we do. Bridging the Gap does rain barrel workshops quite often in the area. Through that water quality education program I talked about, Olathe North High School, they run rain barrel workshops where they have the students actually teach the adults that come in on stormwater pollution, and then they build a rain barrel and get to take a rain barrel home with them. They also run a rain garden education class where you can come in and learn from David Dodds, who's an area expert on rain gardens, about rain gardens and how to build them. And then there's actually free drawings for rain gardens. 13 of the attendees win a rain garden, and then they come back in, and they have to come in with their yard plan and their house plan, and sit down with experts and actually design their own rain gardens. So there are resources out there also through the Master Gardeners. We've been trying to start to work with the Master Gardeners on getting some that are knowledgeable on rain gardens. David Dodds, who I mentioned before, gave a presentation to them last year. There's resources out there. You can contact me to get more information, or your cities. But there's places to learn about it. Yes.
First, I want to give a testimonial. What a wonderful job these two individuals do in supporting local communities, including mine. So thank you. But my question is this. You are urging cities to engage in best management practices with regard to stormwater. One of those you listed on your slides are rain barrels. Can you talk about how you counter the argument that they are ugly and how you encourage their use?
That's a big argument. You know, lots of HOAs don't allow rain gardens. Lots of cities don't allow rain barrels. There are some very pretty rain barrels out there that don't look like the one I showed. They're more expensive. You can't build them yourselves, but there are cities that allow them to be screened, kind of like your trash cans are. There are rain barrels that you can actually use as planters. You plant a lot of plants on the top. It looks just like a large container. Thank you, Elaine. My brain is not working this morning. But there are ways to disguise them if your city allows them to not look so unsightly.
Do the cities require a percentage of new construction to go toward mitigating stormwater management?
The question, as far as new development goes, so yes, we have a regional BMP manual or design manual that cities reference in their development regulations. It's called the MARC BMP manual through the Mid-America Regional Council and APWA, the American Public Works Association. So there's a set of calculations that a development must go through. So they look at the pre-development runoff coefficient and then the post-development runoff coefficient, and they come up with a level of service needed to mitigate that new development. So it's not a straight percentage. You need to reserve 25% of your site for stormwater management. It's more of a hydrology calculation. So they are required to capture, treat, and release that stormwater from that impervious surface. So it is it's a pretty in-depth calculation, and we're pretty confident that it's doing a good job of offsetting new development, the impacts of new development.
Okay, so since it doesn't seem like we have any more questions, I'll pass it back to Elaine.
Maybe I'll ask one last question, because I worked with Overland Park and when they were developing their setback requirements. So do all municipalities in the unincorporated area have the same setback requirements for development so that the riparian zone is protected?
No. The easy answer is no. I'm not, but most cities do have some sort of setback requirement. But there are some discrepancies on the widths of those stream buffer requirements, what can be done in each zone. Majority of the cities say the first 25 feet of the land adjacent to a stream can't be disturbed. Then from 20 to 50, maybe you can allow some passive uses, and then from 50 to 75, maybe even something else. So, so the center line from the ordinary high water mark on the stream bank to maybe 75 feet we're trying to protect those through stream setback requirements. So we no longer do we allow mostly developments to go in, enclose the stream in a pipe, and build houses on it. So we're trying to preserve our stream corridors and allow them to exist as they would naturally. So that's what Elaine's referencing. But no, we have more to go. I think that more
And those
robust.
setbacks are normally determined through the zoning and planning commissions, which is, it gets very complicated. And that's taken to city councils for adoption, and sometimes even those recommendations are not approved. So, another opportunity for civic engagement.
Do you have a question, Katie?
I'm afraid that this is going to highlight my ignorance. So I live in Olathe. I teach at Olathe South High School, and there's just a lot of concrete and stuff that's going on, and I don't even know the name of that creek. Is that part of a plan that goes along with this? I'm just trying to get, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, right? I'm at the 151st at Lindenwood. There's that creek that goes by there. What does that have to do with stormwater? And again, it's my ignorance that's doing that. So.
That's a good question. There actually is a stormwater funded project right there by Olathe South. That's Indian Creek.
Indian Creek.
Near 151st Street.
Yeah.
Same creek, Indian Creek is right out here, just south of us, about a block. That is a flood mitigation project there. But that was a significant project in that there was a combination of utilities and sewer lines that needed to be relocated. The stream was compromising through channel bank erosion. The sewer lines were being compromised, or they would be compromising. Lindenwood was in danger of going into the creek. It was one of these situations where the stream stability was lost, and we had flooding problems. So it's a very extensive and expensive project to go in and try to retrofit. I mean, to try to mitigate some of the water and manage the water that goes through there. So I am familiar with that project, but the cities actually themselves, they are the project administrators. If you have specific questions about a stormwater or flooding project in your city, your best source is to go to the city first if you want to get the details on it. So,
But that has to do with all of this.
it definitely has a lot to do with more of the flooding part of it and stormwater conveyance part of it, and trying to correct some of the problems that we've created for ourselves in the past.
There's a lot of impervious stuff going on in those.
There is a ton, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know Shawnee Mission Northwest put in some additional parking a while back, and part of the environmental programs, the students there actually helped design some of the wetlands that went along for water treatment and retention. So there are opportunities to educate and fix simultaneously. Any other questions before I turn this over to Barbara? She's our Chair of Natural Resources. Thank you guys for coming. Awesome.
I have the privilege as the Chair of Natural Resources to present to our speakers 2 small tokens of our appreciation. The first item is a legal women voters pin. It represents 3 important concepts. It's a stylus because technology is ubiquitous. It is a pin because our history is recorded primarily in paper, and we don't want to forget how to write. It is a light because we want to shine a light on democracy. It's also attached to a red box. This month, which I call Chocolate Month, it represents a concept that life is sweet with education